Good morning again. I'm looking across the screen here. Looks like everybody, if you have not done so, please rename yourself to your name and the entity you're representing. If you don't know how to do that, just click on or hover over your box and three little dots will pop up and drop down and hit rename and off you go. Just a couple of housekeeping things. For those that were here last week, we'll basically do it the same. For those that were not here, basically I'm going to run through all the slides. And those of you that operate on Zoom, it's hard whenever it's presenting to watch the chat and everything. Kathy and Bill and staff will be watching the chat for me the best they can and probably answering things real time. If there's anything that we don't get to, we will grab it at the end and they'll make sure and bring it to my attention if I don't catch it or they don't catch it. Please feel free to chat with each other across the chat. We really wanted this to be in person and unfortunately it wasn't. But last week, with both groups, we saw a lot of amazing resource sharing across organizations. Does anybody know a good CPA? Does anybody know where a good broker for cybersecurity insurance? Please feel free to go back and forth across the chat on these things with each other and stuff, because at the end of the day, you all have different missions here in the county and stuff. You're all supporting something amazing. And by lifting each other up, we lift the community up because of the work that you do. So, no competition here. We're all about doing good in our community. So please feel free to share with each other and stuff. So, and for those that are new as well, if this is your first time here, don't stress out about taking notes and keeping up too much. Basically, come Monday, you will get an email from Chris of this all in a nice little package for you. The presentation will be in a package. The video of recording will be in a package. The chat will be in a package, all for you to then peruse and get back in if you missed a point that you wanted to catch and stuff. So again, thank you very much for being here, and we will get going on today's, which is organizational structure and basics. So let me get this going. So I'm just going to quickly reiterate the course objectives that we went over way back in November. What is this course going to cover? We're going to talk about why organizational structure is important and stuff. We have it. A lot of times, do we have it because we think we have to, or do you really understand why it is important to have it? We'll go over some common structures, especially the one that we advise people when they're starting a nonprofit to have. And then we'll talk about, as you grow, some of the ratchet on committees that you might want to add on as you grow or you get bigger. Reporting. This one's really going to tie back to last week. If you have good governance, you're going to have good reporting and stuff. And I'll explain how that works. And then what I did take, those of you that did attend the session in November, where I went over these objectives originally, I asked you, is there anything else you would like to see in this class? And you actually said, there's some common challenges that we would like to talk about. And one of those was succession planning, motivation, versatility, and staff versus committees, volunteer committees. How do you manage those? So I took a swag at addressing those challenges that you guys brought up in the November session today with hopefully some helpful tips and tricks. And then also I'll go over some resources at the end. A lot of them are similar ones that you saw last week, except I added a really good one out of Stanford University this week that you can get some documents. Just like last week, we'll have some polls along the way. A, so you can learn about each other, and B, we can make sure you're still awake. So let's get going. So again, today our course objectives is we're going to go over committee development and structure. Okay, so what should it look like? The big one is, what are these committees' objectives and roles and responsibilities and reporting requirements? This goes a long way whenever you are recruiting new people for committees. When you're like, hey, would you like to join our finance committee? Having those roles and responsibilities documented, A, is a really great thing involved in vetting and succession planning. And B, you'll see it keeps everybody in their lane. So super important. And we'll talk about succession planning, including, again, those tips and tricks about diversifying your committees and your structures. So last week, we talked about different board structures. So we're talking about leadership up here at this one. So last week, we got into Bill listed off several of them, the patron board, the advisory board and stuff. But, if you get down to brass tacks here in our county, we tend to basically have two models that maybe there'll be a little fuzziness around the edges, but we tend to have working boards or committees or you have governing boards. Working boards are those board members who are doing a lot of the administrative tasks that it takes to run an organization. You may have one or two staff, but usually there's zero and stuff. So they're the ones who are rolling up their sleeves and really doing the missions work. Governing board is whenever generally you do have a bit more staff, you've had people to do the administrative stuff, the fundraising, the mission work, and the board kind of oversees things. So even though we had all those others listed last week, including, you know, the coup d'etat of being a patron board where you just throw your money around and you vote and stuff, really here in our county, we tend to either be working or governing. So the first poll of the day, Chris is going to pull it up for us. And are you a working or a governing board? Let's see if Chris, I got better make sure my chat is working so I can see. Uh-oh, Chris can't launch the polls. Oh, he can launch the polls. Way to go, Chris. So are you a working board or are you a governing board? Again, or are you something else? Awesome. Chris, we don't have to wait as long today because it's not quite as big on the East Slope. So if you want to go ahead and close that one down, and here we are. 57% of you said you were governing and 43% said you were working. Looking at the names that are on the screen, totally obvious. We have some well-established organizations here that have been around a long time on the East Slope. So not at all surprising. Yesterday on the West Slope, you saw working a lot bigger and stuff. It literally was almost 2/3 working, 1/3 governing yesterday. There were a lot of newbies on that call. So they were working boards and stuff, because that's usually where you start, is in the working space. And then you work yourself up to possibly some staff and move into governing. So not at all surprised with what I see on your little name tags today. So let me move us along. It'll take a second to catch. All right, so why is organizational structure important? Basically, it governs the workflow. This is how people are clear as far as who is responsible for what, as far as getting work done, but also decision making. It's super important to understand what requires a board approval and what can be done at the working level and stuff. Do they need to send everything to the board? And having that type of discernment is super important. It basically makes you a lot more efficient and a lot more effective in your time. If you make everything get approved by the board, it's going to take you forever. I always think of it, and this is where you want to, if you have the right people in place, you want to enable decision making at the lowest possible level of your organization to get work done efficiently. Of course, there are some things due to a fiduciary oversight or just governance practices that you want a board to approve. But this is where I always see things getting messy, is people wanting to put their 2 cents in left and right in the different committees and stuff. You've put those people on those committees for a reason. They have a skill set. Let them do their jobs is the biggest thing I can say. Also helps with reporting and communications. And I'll actually go into this in the reporting slide, but by knowing exactly who's accountable for what, it does help you lay out a nice reporting and communication structure and stuff, and checks and balances. These are the committees that are going to be your audits. They are going to basically sign off certain levels of expenditures and stuff. So this is, depending on how you set up your structure, it does set up your checks and balances for the organization and keeping your oversights and your governance in check. Okay, so initial organization layouts that we like to suggest for people that are starting out is obviously even to just get, if you are a group that's getting your 501c3, or if you're a group that's just a community-based group doing an expendable fund with the foundation, you're going to have leadership. Okay, so that's going to be whether you call it an executive committee, a board, or a cabinet, or just leadership. That is going to be your top level decision makers, and we'll go into what they do. They're basically your guiding star as far as putting your mission in place. A lot of people ask me, what are the difference in the names? there's no hard, fast rule, but in general, a 501c3 will call themselves a board. And then other community-based organizations, for instance, our El Dorado Hills Giving Circle, they will, or our Tahoe Women's Fund will call themselves a cabinet and stuff. So depending on, that's what you generally see as a practice that happens in the industry, but there's no hard, fast rule. I have a group coming up out of South County right now, and South County, everybody is different. And they're like, we're not going to call ourselves a cabinet. That sounds too hoity-toity. And, you know, to each their own and stuff. So they want to make themselves, you know, give themselves a leadership title that makes them, you know, comfortable within their community. So that is that one. And then underneath, at least the starting organizations that we like, or committees that we like to suggest, are a marketing and communications committee, and we'll go through those. A development committee, the fun one, going out and finding money, whether it is fundraising, grants, sponsorships, or other membership models, perhaps. Finance committee. On the finance committee, this I know is the toughest one for so many of our organizations to get seated. I always say with a small organization, you at least want 2 people involved in finance and stuff. You want that backup, that second set of eyes on those numbers. I've seen simple organizations as simple as a PTOs get in trouble because their treasurer was left with the books and nobody was ever checking their work, and there was no second set of eyes. It's happened at one of our local high schools. It's happened in a school in Sacramento. But having that second set of eyes is super duper important and stuff. So I always say, even if you are a tiny organization, you need 2 people involved in finance, at least a treasurer and a backup to that treasurer watching the numbers and assisting them, honestly. The next one, the one that is so incredibly easy to seat, which is your program committee. This is delivering the mission. Everybody wants to do program and stuff, which is wonderful, but it takes all of these to deliver your mission. It takes the marketing, it takes the development, it takes the finance and stuff. So that is super important to make sure that people, you know, that want to get involved, you know, maybe you rotate them through committees so they understand what it takes to deliver that program. So these are just the basic ones. As you grow or as you become a 501c3, the additional ones you'll want to consider, and I know Bill and Hillary mentioned some of these last week, is an official audit committee. Even if it's an internal audit committee, even an organizations I serve on that only do the postcard 990 EZs that are tiny, we do internal audits. And we have an internal audit committee that we just set at the beginning of each year who's willing to do our internal audit. And that just means that we're taking 2 people from leadership that are not our treasurer and not our finance committee, and they are looking at our books as well. Human resources, you'll want to add that one as soon as you either employ staff or even contractors. I know a lot of organizations, as you are growing, kind of try to do work with contractors because that way you don't have to do all the added benefit overhead costs. There's a lot of tricky things with contractors as well. So having a human resources in place, even as you enter the independent contractor space, is a good thing to have, to at least look over those contracts, make sure you're doing everything on the up and up. Bylaws, if you're a 501c3, and bylaws is one that, again, every couple of years, you kind of want to scrub them, look at them. Impact is another hot one these days to add. And then if you're big enough, you may want to split your development up into various entities and stuff. You might need to split apart grants from fundraising or from sponsorships and create little subcommittees underneath your development as you grow. So, Chris, if you could do it, the next poll. So in addition to your leadership committee, how many subcommittees do you currently have for your organization? 1 or 2, 3 or 4, 5 or more, 0. Leadership does it all, which is a fair thing. Or I love the last one, nothing formal. We just pull together a committee as we need it. So again, I'm super interested to see how your guys' numbers come in today, because again, as we saw in that first poll, we saw that you have a lot more established entities. So I'm expecting exactly what I'm seeing in your numbers, that things are a little bit more settled for you. Okay, Chris, let's end that poll and share it. So there it is. You guys have about the 3 or 4, and even some with 5 or more. So by the time we put those together, over half of you have a good committee structure in place. Few of you just have 1 or 2. And there's always the nothing formal. We do it as we need it. And it might be okay for the stage that you're in, but always be thinking ahead as far as what could come next for you and your organization. So it's going to get a little wordy. I'll try to make it fun, because basically what I'm going to get into now is the roles and responsibilities of these different organizations, or these different committee structures and stuff. So leadership is your top one that we discussed. Again, it could be a board, it could be a cabinet, it could be a executive committee. This is, as I said before, this is kind of the guiding star. This is who establishes the programs, the policies, and the process to support the mission, and they're going to oversee it to ensure it is sustainable. This is a Bill Roby thing here. Anybody who's ever met with Bill, you will hear him say, you know, stay in your lane. This is the group that establishes the lane by saying what your mission's going to be. And then they're the ones that are constantly monitoring to make sure you're staying in the lane. So I found some fun little comic strips to bring these a little bit more to life. And here's my first one today, which actually is pretty stinking relevant. So the lanes of the holidays at the end of the year. Normally Halloween takes over October, Thanksgiving takes over November, and Christmas takes over December. Yeah, not so much anymore. As we all know, generally by October, you start to see decorations in Home Depot and other places. So again, that's, if you think about it from a business perspective, that's just crazy. It wreaks havoc and stuff. And the same thing happens to organizations if they start to do some lane creep. Basically, whenever it comes to organizations, especially whenever they are new, I have a group that I worked with over this last year out of the West Slope that I like to call them my shiny object group. Every time something new or neat came across the table, they're like, oh, can we do it? Oh, can we do it? Oh, that looks amazing. And I really had to take care not to squash all of that positivity and that just that passion for what they want to do. But some of the things had them drifting out of their lane, drifting out of their mission. So this leadership group needs to have the foresight of, given how much money you have, your staff, your everything, this is our lane. This is what we can do at this time. And then take all those shiny objects and put them in your strategic plan for later down the road. But this is the group that really has to pull everything into focus and make sure that it is staying on track. So again, what that means is you're defining your lane, you're reviewing and creating your mission. It is okay to refine your mission. We actually just had an amazing group here in the county refine their mission in the last year. And anybody who's familiar with it, it's our hub system. So our hub, I believe it's Hub 5 that's up in Tahoe, that are tied in with the libraries. And they're also tied into the First 5 entity. Well, now, whenever you think about the classic First 5, hello, it's birth to 5. If you actually read the mission statement now with the hub system that is tied to First 5, they redacted that this last year and expanded it to basically life services, birth to death, because that's exactly what they're doing. They have decided at this time that they are going to expand their lane from 0 to 5 to birth to death. And that is fine to do that. And when they did that, they redid their mission statement to align with that, to reestablish their lane. This is the other one. This is the group, I like to call it the drift light or the sensor. All of us that drive those cars right now that have the little buzz on your shoulder whenever you hit the lines on the side of the road, or you have a light that starts flashing at you. This leadership is the group that has to be aware of those sensors and has to call it out and actively participate in that whenever it happens. This is the group that is also going to determine which programs are consistent with the mission. Again, always being aware of the bigger picture of what can you capacity-wise take on and stuff. And this is a good one for people who you do have people on your committee that you do want to listen to and respond to. Definitely take those. I generally advise groups to keep a ongoing document somewhere of ideas to look at in your strategic plan, because they will get lost through the year. Everyone is so busy. So whenever something is brought up that might be something that you want to add it to a list for your strategic plan conversation later on. This is the group that is going to be filling the gas tank of your car, reviewing and approving the annual budget. It is January right now. You all should have in place approved budgets for this year. It should be happening in the last quarter of last year and stuff, using your actuals and looking how you should close out the year. What is your annual budget for this year? I can't tell you how many organizations are into January and possibly into February and do not have a set budget yet. You want to do that. You need to be ahead of that. And that's what leadership's role is. Again, my car analogies here, leadership is in charge of following the code of the road, which basically means you're the ones who are really held to those legal standards and ethical behaviors of the organization. Again, that obedience, care, loyalty, and transparency to the people that support you and to the clients that you serve and stuff. That is why this group is the one that will sign the conflict of interest and stuff, because that is one of your codes of the road, is making sure that you do that. And this is the part that I love, because usually you get involved in an organization because you do love it. This is the group that is always going out there and enhancing the organization in the public standing, whether you're meeting with key stakeholders or donors and stuff. And we talked about some of that last week and how you get this leadership comfortable to have those conversations through training them on elevator speeches and stuff. But this is the group. They're giving their time to this organization. There's obviously a love and a passion there for it. So that is your leadership. Finance, the dreaded finance. And I know this is a tough one, but at the end of the day, you cannot do your work without financial support and stuff. So a super important one, whether it's long-term or it is short-term. This is the group that is responsible for managing those finances. I like to say it basically, I had a group this last week that actually have just revived their 501c3, and they were starting to hash over a budget this last week. And of course, as they were hashing over the budget, all I heard was program, program, program. We need to buy this, we need to buy that. This is what we need to get done. But they were leaving off the little things that it takes to just have an organization, those things that Bill and Hillary talked about last week. Insurance, so having, just as a car has insurance, you need to have insurance for your organization, whether it's liability, D&O, cybersecurity, things like that. Maintenance is one that you can tie off to organizations as well and stuff, whether it be website maintenance, whether it be paying your bills for the office that you're in or renting. So here's my fun little one for this one. So a lot of people, whenever they start a 501 or want to do a community-based organization, again, I just had another group last week wanting to do some basketball stuff. Well, we need to pay our coaches and we need to do this and stuff. Well, that's all well and good, but did I mention the additional fees and stuff? So those things that we were just talking about, you're going to be transporting kids places for these basketball leagues. You have to have insurance. Your drivers need special licenses to transfer them. You probably want to make sure that they have, a certain level of insurance involved with transferring kids around. So super important to remember those and stuff. So part of owning that vehicle, owning this organization. So again, the group is going to, and by the way, you guys will get all these slides, because what I like to see people do is, as you're setting up committees, that you go over these and agree that these are your roles and responsibilities, or maybe you tweak them. So you guys will get these. If you don't have them for your organization, I highly advise, given that it is the beginning of the year, having that conversation with each of your committees, just having that, hey, it's the beginning of the year, fresh start, let's just level set. Here's what our duties are for this year. So budget obviously is a big one, short-term and long-term for this committee. This is the group that's going to present the budget to the board, whether it's the treasurer, who is maybe the chair of this committee, or the finance committee chair, will present to the board for approval in what should have been Q4, the last 3 quarters of the previous year. This is the group that would review the financial statements on a monthly basis, whether it is a bank account or if you are getting quarterly statements from the foundation because you have an expendable fund or you have an endowment with us. They should be tracking as much as they can real time your expenditures and stuff as far as what's going on. They're the ones who also agree on what is the threshold for authorization of expenditures and stuff. If you're a small organization that doesn't have a lot of money, you may want your expenditures set at like $250 before, you know, the board needs to authorize it. If you're bigger, it may be $2,000 and stuff where a board needs to authorize something. Generally, this is something that's already in the budget, but again, it's so big, it's such a percent of your overall financial that you want them looking at it. This group is involved with the development committee as far as grants go. So again, these committees are working hand in hand, because as you're developing your budget for the year and stuff, literally the development committee has to be going, okay, I think we can get $10,000 in grants this year. I think we'll have a fundraiser that'll raise about $20,000 and stuff. But finance can tell them, in order to do the work, this is how much, you know, we need. And then development and others need to come in and say, okay, here's how we're going to do it. Here's the best way that we see that's going to come to fruition and it can happen for us. Assets. If you have, for instance, an endowment with us at the foundation, your assets in that endowment are invested. I hope you're taking a look at it. How's that investment doing? The finance committee should be looking at that. How's the performance been of those investments with us or with a different entity if you have it somewhere else? Any fiscal policies as well will be driven out of this group, including that internal audit one that we talked about. And all the legal reporting requirements are generally driven out of finance, whether it's something simple as your taxes to registering to do a raffle with the state and reporting those raffle earnings and stuff, because even something simple as not registering a raffle with the state and not reporting the earnings from that raffle can put your 501c3 in jeopardy. And we have seen it happen right here in our county where people have had it pulled until they clean that up. You are going to see this at the bottom of every single committee. Every single committee needs to be reserving the necessary time to recruit and train members. So I love to see conversations happening well in advance of when someone is supposed to term out, as far as what is coming next for them or who's going to be their replacement. Communications. This is probably the second most fun one that people like to do, because this is where you get to, you know, create logos and create campaigns and stuff. It is a very, very important committee to have. They basically are putting together all your marketing and communications, not just with your clients, but with your donors. So they are the ones who are raising the awareness for your organization. Again, I alluded to it earlier as the bumper stickers and everything, but it's also your lights, your horns, making sure things are working in working order, so people know who you are and know that you're coming. There are certain organizations in this in our county that have such strong logos or such strong color schemes. I can tell you from a mile away who it is at a table at an event and stuff, because they have such good brand recognition in our county. A lot of people think brand recognition, you're thinking, you know, a product. You are a product. So super important. And Chris Ringness is going to be doing an amazing job on this one here in one of our upcoming ones around communications. But on this one, I used an old Ren and Stimpy one, as far as, you know, basically he's going to run into the store and Ren starts laying on the horn and saying, you know, you weren't running, you were walking. So I like that one. So again, organizational marketing, branding, communication plans. Basically, whenever it comes to communication, I like to have a calendar all year long. So whenever I say communication plan, it's almost a communication calendar as far as how often are you posting to social media? What are you posting? When are you going to have a press release before an event, after event, thanking your supporters and stuff? You have a good story to tell, an outcome from a client or something that you want to share. Having a calendar is really important. Developing and building that brand story to drive new donors. I cannot tell you how incredibly proud I am of an organization who really struggled with this one. And I know a lot of you guys on this call have been around for a while, but story is huge and stuff. If you can get a client or a partner to share a story. I have a group that started with almost nothing about a year and a half ago. And this last year, because they really took that story to heart and everything was wrapped around stories and messages. And they did a big end of year campaign that involved a story of one of their clients that they had helped and stuff. This group basically went from zero to $100,000, over $100,000 in 1 year. And that's pretty good for an organization that's just starting out. And by the way, I believe there's only one grant in there for $8,000. So they've done some really good work, and so much of it revolved around story and making it relevant, the work you're doing to people in our community. Developing strategies to leverage various marketing communications tools. I know, this is where I'm going to speak a little different from East Slope to West Slope and stuff. I know you guys up there are pretty savvy whenever it comes to your electronic and social media and stuff. If you aren't, it is something to definitely consider. And Chris is going to touch on this big time, but we've had a lot of move-ins during COVID, as I know you on East Slope are very aware of. With that, that means you have gotten some new generations, the Generation X, the Generation Y, the Generation Z. How you communicate with those new demographics or those growing demographics in our community is very different from how you do contact some of our older demographics. So a lot of times you need a multifaceted marketing plan to support those. We still have our demographic in this county that wants that postcard to put on their refrigerator and stuff. But we also have that demographic in our county that wants to just get hit up on social media and stuff. So I know it's not a comfortable space, and Chris is going to give you guys a lot of tips and tricks here in the coming weeks with his presentation, but it is a space in order to engage these new residents to our county that is super, super important. So we'll help you guys with that. Speaking engagements. Even now during COVID, a lot of our service organizations and stuff are still meeting virtually. Don't stop, try to seek out speaking engagements. Whenever I was with Ag in the Classroom, I spoke to our local Kiwanis Club once a year. Always went in, always on their calendar to talk about Farm Day, the big Farm Day event that we did. And, it started out with them just giving us a little check to next thing I know, I had volunteers doing all the parking from this organization and stuff. So there is a lot there to keep that ongoing engagement and stuff and have those speaking engagements and getting your brand out there. Again, my last bullet, sustain your committee. Always be on the lookout. How are you going to keep those butts in seats? Development. Again, probably the second hated one other than finance, but it is the one that makes us to be able to afford the car that we are driving and pay for that car and stuff. So they are the philanthropic arm and stuff. And this one will be hit on big time at the next one by Lois and Kathy. They're going to basically talk to you guys about the different funding streams you should be considering, because so many of us get locked into one or two. In fact, we saw it huge with the foundation. I know some of you probably got the poll during the height of COVID last year, but we were asking how are things going financially? And so many organizations relied on a few key donors and a big fundraiser every year. Well, when COVID hit and that fundraiser could not happen, they took a massive hit. So you should always be thinking about how you diversify the funding for your organization, even out well into the future. One that was on, for example, Ag in the Classroom that I used to be the ED of was on our radar for years. Is we knew that we wanted to do curriculum for teachers and stuff and create some kind of membership subscription model off of it. And we kept it out there. We knew it would be important. And it just so happened that COVID was the perfect time for us to flip that switch and make it happen. And we got some funding to be able to do that and to show that it was of value. So always thinking about other options out there is super important. Oh, we got to share my comic strip on this one. So this is the one that development's always keeping their eye on how much things cost, and the guy's coming up and they're getting ready to change the gas price on them. So that's always a super important one. So again, they are going to partner with the board. I know last week, whenever we talked about people, our board members don't like to ask for money. Guess what? Development along with communication should be helping write those, those elevator speeches and stuff too. They're also the ones who should be making recommendations around a giving board. What is a giving board? Even if you give $5, that is considered a giving board. I can tell you I've applied for grants with the Sacramento Region Foundation, which, by the way, you are part of the Sacramento region if you are ever looking for other grants and stuff. I cannot think of a single grant that I applied for them, which had the box of, is your board a 100% giving board? And I had to mark it yes or no and stuff. Giving is financial. But again, if you have an organization or a board member who gives, you say, for instance, they give hundreds of dollars in bottles of wine every year to your fundraiser, you still want that $5, $10, $25 on the books to ethically say, yes, they are a giving board from a financial standpoint. Super important. So this is the group that's going to develop, again, your annual fund development. What are you going to do? Are you going to do grants? Are you going to do a fundraiser? Are you going to do a sponsorship model? And again, they'll get into that. And you always want to be tracking. I mean, keep your historicals for your events and stuff. No, don't just plop it in the budget. What worked well, what didn't go well. Get down into the nitty gritty. How was your attendance and stuff? What can we do to drive that next year? That's what development does. Again, they're going to work closely with communications and with finance to implement whatever strategies they come up with. Again, that long-term thing I just discussed as far as that mix of strategies, it doesn't have to be right now, but think down the road, next year we'd like to add this, or it might not be on our plate. And again, similar to communications, I like to have a development calendar too. Have those grants already listed on your calendar for the year. So you are looking at it, a week or two in advance. Have your fundraiser out there and stuff. So I can't tell you how many times, and Kathy will attest to this, bless your guys' hearts, but all your grants come in at 11:59:59. And stuff. And not to say there might be a good reason for it, but if you're in front of it, we do pay attention to that, by the way, when you do turn it in and stuff. But if you're in front of it, you shouldn't be in that situation. You should know that the Women's Fund grant is coming out at this time, and you start working at it a little bit in advance. And by the way, that's part of you being able to retain your committee, is to not have everything be in a rush in an emergency situation, that you've planned things out and that you've allocated resources accordingly. Again, helping that board with the next one, helping make sure your board can talk the talk whenever they're out at an event and develop relationships. Hillary brought up a good one last week of role playing. Take it. It's kind of fun, actually. You could almost do it as a icebreaker at a board meeting and stuff, or as just an intro thing, is to do a little role play and stuff as a fun aside from everything. Again, it's just creating that culture of philanthropy throughout the organization. And again, my last one, as always, take the time to always be looking. How are you going to keep this committee filled and stuff? Always stay in front of it. Program. Everybody loves program. This is the one that basically gets the job done. However, they do have a lot of accountability as well. So they're making sure that the job is being done in a financially responsible and sustainable manner. So they should be doing the program per the budget that they were allocated. And if there are red flags, they should be communicating that to the relevant committees and stuff. So they're basically the ones that's going to keep it humming, keep the engine tuned, and keep it running, per whatever plan you've lined out. And here's my little one for this one. You might check my engine light. So they're the ones who, if something on program is going left or right, they should be highlighting it to leadership that it needs to be done. So they're going to oversee any new program development, including any partners. They're going to articulate the budget needs or personnel. I always love when people try to, that aren't on program, try to articulate needs and stuff. It is perfectly fine to, give inputs and stuff. But again, you have these people on program because they are the experts. Monitoring and assessing existing programs. Metrics. This is the group that should be coming up with how are you going to measure the success of a program and stuff. So even this wonderful group that I just started talking to in the last couple of weeks that wants to do a basketball league for at-risk youth, how are you going to measure that you're successful? Do the kids come to practice? Are they 100% attendance or 95% attendance? They're going to have them signed kind of a code of ethics and stuff. Is it 100% that's signed? Do you have a good adherence to the code of ethics for these kiddos and stuff? Grade checks. What are their grades? Is it making an impact and stuff? So even something as simple as a youth basketball league, how are you going to measure the success of that? Grantors and funders love data. They love seeing how you are successful and stuff. And we're always available to help you guys with tools. If you need to figure out, how do I do surveys and stuff like that, we can always assist if it's not in your wheelhouse as far as how you can develop different metrics. They're going to work with the communications committee. Again, those stories are going to come out of the clients that are served and stuff. And so generally, I always rely on program. I'll go to them and say, we need a really good story for, our upcoming Christmas letter. Do you have a client that would be interested that we could talk to? Pictures and quotes and stuff, super important. And generally, you let program, because they're closest to it, make those type of decisions as far as what would be best. And they're the ones that are going to facilitate priority discussions within the organization. They're the boots on the ground. They're seeing what's working, what's not working, and usually are the first ones to propose new changes. Again, my last bullet, sustain the committee. Sustain the committee. So I think that, yep. Before we go to the next one, Chris is going to pop up another poll. So after seeing these committees and the framework and the roles and responsibilities that I laid out for you, how are you feeling about your own organization? Do you feel that your organization is a well-oiled machine and it's running well? Do you feel your organization has some of these in some form and just need a little bit of tweaking? Or using my car analogy, you have a flats and you could really see some value in some of these. Or the worst all, you are in the service bay and need a serious engine overhaul. And I won't be surprised with COVID. I mean, we've seen a lot of people, a lot of our committee members, to be honest, that have had to step away to support family, to support jobs during COVID. So I know a lot of organizations are hurting when it comes to committee structure right now. I actually sit on an organization right now that we are down to the bare bones, the 3 minimum that we have to keep it legit with the government and stuff. And it was COVID. It was, I have to help teach my kids. I can't do this and stuff. So it's very much a real thing. Chris, if you can end this one and share. So for the most part, you guys feel really good. 60% of you just need some tweaking. Some of you feel like you're missing something. I'll have a question at the end, at the end of our thing, as far as what are some things we can do to help you guys. And if you want to answer that one in the space that you would like us to come in and look at your structure and help you, you can do that. So we will have a question so we can follow up on that with you guys at the end of the presentation. So we're going to move out of all the wordiness now, and we're going to move into that reporting thing. So last week, Bill and Hillary talked a lot about good governance practice. And if you have good governance, you generally will have good reporting. They kind of go hand in hand and stuff. So what I like to do with a lot of the organizations I'm working with is just to keep things flowing well is my leadership committee, whether it's a board, a cabinet, or an executive committee, I like to have one person from every committee also sit on my leadership and stuff. Whether it's the chair of my finance also sits on my leadership committee, but this allows there to be a constant cyclical flow of information. So by having the finance chair sitting on my leadership can give direction to finance, and finance can receive it and take it back. Finance can come back and ask for direction when and where needed and stuff. So super important. And with that, when you build your agenda for your leadership committees, that's why you have, as Hillary showed in the example last week, you have committee reports every single time. And if a committee has nothing to report, there's nothing to report, and that's okay. But there is always that time for committees to ask for something or receive information down, and it recurs cyclical. Yesterday, I had a good question as far as, calendaring. How does this work? Generally, what I do is I line up the committees if I can, such that the committees meet prior to the leadership meeting of the month. So usually my committees will meet at the beginning of the month. Leadership will meet at the end of the month. It's usually kind of nice. Or you can put leadership at the beginning and get your financial statements in and stuff. But you always want to have it on a circle and stuff. So that way information is constantly flowing in that circle and stuff as far as, the meeting format goes. The other one that I think is a big one that catches a lot of us is timely minutes, including action items out of committees. So even committees should have minutes. And I say timely because I work with a lot of organizations whose minutes, the secretary's taking their notes and stuff, but usually we all get busy, and they are volunteers, and they'll get put out along with the next agenda. So it'll be, you won't see those minutes until really close to the next meeting. It is super important to get the minutes out really close to after your meeting ends and stuff, because that's provided direction. It's provided action items that need to go and occur and stuff. And I can take notes pretty well, but this really gives people accountability that their name is down, that they signed up to do something, or a decision was made. Another important thing about minutes that Hillary and Bill alluded to last week, these are legal documents and stuff. In all cases, minutes are something that have to be retained and stuff. Whether it is getting a new signature on a bank account, you need to have your minutes. So these are very important, and having them is timely. I know this scares everyone, this bullet down below, probably less so on ESOP, because I know you guys are a little bit more tech savvy and to get a little bit moved, but having some kind of secure cloud-based storage for your minutes, agendas, presentations, marketing, collateral, more. People are bombarded these days with electronic communications, and by allowing and teaching your board members and your committee to be able to go access minutes and be able to go access agendas rather than digging through their email and stuff, that way, it just makes things efficient and effective as far as them being able to access them. Them being able to access your logo versus emailing everyone, where's the logo? I like to do with my new groups is I take, 15 minutes of each board meeting, and I train them on something new, just a little something, just a little bite and stuff of something that they need to know from an electronic format. So that is that one. Succession planning. So I'm going to get into those common challenges now, succession planning. And that was one that everybody brought up in November. Succession planning for your organization, it's in the name. It is a plan. It needs to be proactive and stuff. So you need to be in front of it. Basically, you can have a great mission and you can have a great program, but if you don't have leadership to keep it running, it really will not matter and stuff. So succession plan is really important. If you are an organization that has term limits, you should be having a conversation with someone who is terming out, or if for instance, they need to be re-elected, you need to be having that conversation with them a good 3-4 months before their term is up and stuff. We had an organization that had no term limits here in our county not too long ago, and they all of a sudden they were all done. They hadn't put any plan in place, and it was a scramble, and we managed to get them reseated, but it was a conversation that nobody had ever really had. So it's really important to basically integrate succession planning into your strategic plan. Do it ahead of time. Know your inventory of your organization. Who's on your board? What do they bring to the table? Or who's on your committees? I always suggest that, if you are bringing on new leadership, that there's an application that they fill out. So you are aware of what they're bringing to the table, their experience, their work experience, their nonprofit experience, and you can quickly identify gaps. I have that new group out of South County, an older gentleman that I knew. He great guy, great leader. And as soon as I saw his application, had no idea he was retired from Cal OES. He had grant writing experience and stuff. So to be able to have those conversations, it was really, really great. Always be upfront with expectations for board members. This is really important in succession planning because word will get out if you say that you are only expected to do one thing and you do another. So for instance, time commitment on meetings. If you say your board meetings are only going to be an hour and a half, but you consistently run 2 hours, just be upfront with your expectations with people as far as, what is going to be expected of them. We meet this many times. Usually it's this much out of time, including giving board. That needs to be part of the upfront communication. We are giving board. This is part of what it is. So again, if you're upfront with people and they know what they're doing, it makes succession planning a lot easier. And strong onboarding leads to effective successions. So get it right from the get-go, from vetting them and being aware of what they're bringing to the table to any training. I have someone, actually a personal acquaintance, who just joined a very, very established board in our county. And she called me after the first board meeting, extremely frustrated. She was so excited about this, so excited to get involved, and she just felt like she got blindsided. And so just by the way they were running the meeting, actions that were happening, and I, kind of asked her, go ask and see if they have a board manual, any board training, get their hold of their policies and procedures and stuff. So again, you don't want that new person you get them on. You want them to be comfortable. You want them to feel effective. Oh, I think I have one. Oh, I do have a poll on this one. Chris, please. So how does succession planning work for your organization? Are you that group that serves or volunteers until you don't want to do it anymore? Do you have term limits and a calendar, but you don't really stick to it? Or you are really good and you abide by your bylaws and you have a schedule? It's fair to say, I'm not really sure. And stuff, what it is. And if you aren't a 501c3, you're just a community-based organization, you probably don't have bylaws, but this is one where having a policy and procedure about terms is an important one, even if you don't have official bylaws, because you perhaps are an expendable fund at the foundation. So it's still super important. Awesome, Chris. If you want to stop that one and share it, yay! So this is where I'm seeing the difference in between the organizations that were present yesterday versus today. You guys are pretty good. You abide by your bylaws and your policies, and you have a schedule and stuff. Those of you that marked you serve and volunteer till you don't want to anymore, it's worth an internal conversation and stuff. Not that we want to squish anyone's love or passion for a mission, but long-term, is that the right thing for the organization? Maybe you don't want to force anybody off, or do you move people? A big one last week that I was sharing in the chat was, can you move someone to an advisory role and stuff? So they come in and they're involved in your strategic plan and stuff, but they don't necessarily are involved day in and day out and stuff. So you always want to think about, having something, because it forces new blood, it forces turnover, for good or for bad. And you can always move volunteers into advisory roles and still keep them engaged and still keep them involved. So thank you for that one. The next challenge that people asked, the next challenge that you guys asked me to address was motivation. How do you motivate people? The biggest thing is valuing their time. Most of these people are volunteers. You need to adhere to the expectations outlined for their time and stuff. I bet, and I just saw this yesterday, so I'm going to move so I can see some faces. I bet if I asked you guys here, how many of you serve on more than one board or one committee in our community, probably most of you would raise multiple fingers. For me, I am 5. Just do that. Raise your hand as far as how many you serve on. I serve on 5 different boards right now. 3. I'm seeing a lot of hands up there. You guys, it's great. It's lovely. But also we want to make sure that you have what we call work-life volunteer balance. So adhering to that is super important for keeping people motivated. If they feel that they can come in, they can be efficient, they can be effective, and they can go home, that's great. Again, training and onboarding them for success and managing that frustration is super important for motivation. I mean, it just broke my heart when my friend wrote me last week and was just like, what do I do? I don't know if I made the right, I mean, she was already rethinking her decision. I'm like, no, don't go there yet and stuff, but just, you don't want them frustrated out of the chute. Play to their strengths. Give them a place in the organization where they will feel fulfilled and successful and stuff. So don't try to put a square peg into a round hole and stuff just because you have a pulse, as Bill put in his query last week and stuff. You want them, they will be there longer and they will serve you better if you allow them to fill the skill set that they were brought on for. Now, you can have them go shadow different groups and learn other skill sets and stuff. And especially if they're on leadership where they can hear the reports, that's a really good way for them to start to branch out. The other one on this one is I love to put people on committees first, the subcommittees, before moving them up to leadership. That way they definitely can see what's going on. Value their inputs. Ask them how they feel about something. Don't just let something go at the table at a board meeting or a committee member. If you have somebody who's sitting back and stuff, how do you feel about this? Listen to what they have to say and follow up with them and stuff. Show appreciation. Thank them, and thank them again and stuff. I know we are very good about thanking our donors. You also need to thank your volunteers and your board members. That's super important because they are giving up their time, which in some ways for me, whenever I think about life, is more precious to me. Versatility. So again, the big one as far as understanding your versatility is understanding who you have at the table from the get-go. So this is where you want to inventory those skills that people are bringing to the table. If you do not have a board application and stuff, and I have one that's just a Google form that people do and stuff, I'm happy to share that with folks, but you want to inventory skills and needs and stuff. Communicate your needs. If no one knows, how will you get that seat filled? I know in our county, we are so prevalent of, do you know anyone who might sit on the finance committee? And we just do it via word of mouth. If you are comfortable, again, we have grown leaps and bounds with these other generations that have come into the county with the move-in from COVID. Put it out there on social media. We are looking for people to serve on our marketing committee and stuff. The time commitment is this and stuff. Get it out there. If no one knows it exists, or we just go the old school, hey, do you know somebody and stuff, you are missing an entire pool of possibly being available. And this is where one that I like to say, leverage your community, especially those wide breadth entities like your Chamber of Commerce's and your service organizations. If you aren't, a lot of times, if you aren't a member of your chamber, usually it's good money to have a 501c3 become, or a nonprofit entity, become a member of your chamber. Most of them have a reduced rate for you to be a chamber member if you are a nonprofit. This is where you can go in with at a mixer. They have mixers all the time. They're still having events online where you can go in and talk about your organization and stuff. And not only are you talking now to businesses who might sponsor you, but businesses who have employees who might be passionate about what you do and stuff. So it's a great way, you know, Joe, who owns the body shop, may also love pet rescue and stuff. So it's a great way to really leverage and get to know who's out there in your community and stuff, and know what their interests are. Again, that one I just alluded to, make your organization accessible, especially to the millennials and the other generations that are coming in that are younger. You are not going to get to them unless you are using social media and stuff. It's going to be a really hard track to get to those folks. So Instagram, honestly, Facebook is more the 40 and 50. You've got to get down to Instagram and some others, LinkedIn, if you don't have a LinkedIn profile and stuff, you've got to get into these other avenues or you will not reach them. Consider holding an open forum and stuff. So once you get out there on platforms, hold an open forum, hold a virtual open house right now, introducing your organization to the community and stuff, you know, to new people that have moved in, you know, share some of those stories, share some of that. I mean, a 30-minute, you know, open forum with some new move-ins, you never know where you may go. I took one of my friends that moved in here from the Bay Area. I took her along with me to the Women's Fun event that happened and stuff. And lo and behold, here we go. You know, I'm like, just come along and stuff. And so she's already talking about joining a committee. You know, have some kind of open, have the ability to invite someone along to see something and stuff. So that is super important. On this one, this one's one that I'm not going to have a poll on, but if you have any other ideas as far as how you get people involved, please share it in the chat just so we can kind of do a little bit of mind share, just pop it in there, any other additional ideas of how you get committee members and volunteers and leadership and stuff, just throw it in the chat for us. We had another challenge that people talked about, staff versus committees. How do you keep them from stepping on each other, getting along and stuff? Well, the first thing is that roles and responsibilities. Ensure that volunteers and committee members, their roles are very well articulated versus staff, including time and skills and stuff. So I know that at least when I'm a volunteer, I'm working at the foundation, you know, during the day hours. So whenever I finally get to my volunteer stuff, my board stuff, I'm doing stuff in the evening. And I need to be respectful of that staff is not working in the evening and stuff. So I'm not going to get a real-time answer and stuff until the next day when they're back on. So just keeping things clean and clear and remembering, I'll creep down to that last bullet already, that the staff and the volunteers are both with people who have jobs and families and hobbies. So everyone, whether it's a staff member or it's a volunteer, has the right to balance their work, their volunteer, and their life and stuff. So again, just remembering that. I'll even say my boss, because I can see him because he's in the second box right now. He's one that he has learned, because I'm only part-time. So like Friday night, Bill is one that he's around the clock and stuff. So, but Bill is very respectful that he sent me a note on Friday night at 8 o'clock because his brain was going. And, you know, I didn't respond to it until Monday when I got in, you know, whenever I was back on the clock and stuff. And he very much recognizes that. So having that awareness and recognizing that is super important, both with your staff and with your volunteers. So those were the big challenges. Here's some resources. And again, these are hyperlinked if anybody wants to drop them down, but whenever you guys get the presentation, you'll be able to hyperlink it too and click on that hyperlink. The one that I added this week is the Stanford Law School Mills Legal Clinic. I love this one because they have a lot of documentation that is also very specific to lanes of missions and lanes of organizations. So they'll have stuff that pertains to veterans. They'll have documents that pertain to agriculture, that pertain to, you know, animals and stuff. So I love the Stanford Law School and the Mills Legal Clinic and some stuff that they have there as well. So I'm going to stop my share. I'm going to check my chat. Kathy's probably still muted. You can just shake, Kathy. Did I miss anything? Anything out there? She's saying no. Nobody's got anything for me. So, oh, wait, except Chris. Thank you. Chris just got me. I skipped a poll. Chris, can you do the poll without me doing it? This is the one that I said I would do, which is, I might have to share my screen to do it. There was one poll. There it is. It just came up. So what? No, not that one. Is it that one? Sorry, everybody.
Well, that's the one you skipped, but we do have another one here at the very end.
I have the very end one. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Okay, this is the very end one. This is the one that I wanted some feedback from you guys. Whenever it comes, and I said I would allude to this later, if the foundation offered consulting or resources in this space, in this organizational basic space, what would you find most beneficial? Would you like us to come in and look at your structure and your workflow and give you feedback? Would you like us to observe your reporting and methods and give feedback? Help you find leadership and committee members? Maybe observe or critique your leader or other meetings for efficiency and effectiveness. If there's something not on there, let me know. But how can we help and stuff? So that way we kind of know what comes next for us. I have a feeling that find leadership and committee members will be, that's always one. And I am going to promise Chris Ringness right now that I'm going to go get my eyes checked because my little slide numbers that are on the bottom right side are so small that I'm struggling with remembering where or being able to read them. Awesome, Chris. If you want to end this one and share it. All right. So this one's similar, east slope to west slope. Help us find leadership committee members and stuff. So I think we need to put our brains together a little bit on this one here at the foundation. We've definitely been having a lot more thoughts about that as far as how we can do that and building in some tips and tricks. I think we do need to have some discussions about possibly with our chamber. I know we started having discussions with the county chamber last week as far as engaging a little bit more when it comes to the nonprofit side and making them more aware of what's here in the county, especially with all the move-ins with real estate and everything. I know we also were talking to our real estate. We have a real estate organization, at least here on the West Slope, as far as how, would they say we engage all these move-ins and get them involved and get our message out there? Is there a regular newsletter or something that we can leverage? So definitely we'll put our thinking caps on for you guys on that one a little bit and stuff. So with that, if there's nothing else, so next week, it's the Kathy and Lois show. I know Kathy's gonna smile at that one. There you go. So next week will, basically be all about that development space and stuff. So different strategies. Those of you that have never done a government grant before, scary, 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 but absolutely amazing and stuff. So Kathy will get into that. Go ahead, Kathy. Can you actually talk?
Yep. You have a question right now from Brenda. If you want to look at the chat.
Aha! Yes, Brenda, I do. Do I agree that the development is the job of the entire board, not just a few assigned to the committee? Yes. I mean, your leadership is, that of all people, that is the people leading and setting the mission for the organization. I think it's just a matter of getting them comfortable and stuff. You don't want your treasurer, your secretary out there, and not being able to eloquently speak and develop your organization and stuff. Now, can you expect them to do it out of the chute? No, but I think they can use some tools. Bill.
Yeah, this is something that came up yesterday as well in Avis's presentation. And it's important when you're recruiting your board members and individuals that become your advocates, your ambassadors back in the community, that you gauge their level of ability to ask. Not everybody's geared towards that. Some people find that very uncomfortable. So you don't want to put somebody in a position where they're going to fail or feel like they're going to fail. So it's putting people in positions that are going to be able to go do the yes because they're comfortable with being told no, and no is okay. The other secret to development is, and one we practice all the time, this is a daily practice at the foundation, never give a donor a reason to say no. Because if you do, they will say no, because everybody's asking. And so you have to think through what you're presenting and look at that and say, is there a reason in here for them to say no?
Yeah. Even as a giving board, one of the things is, do they need to write their check the second that they sign up? Well, no, so I give them, they can't say no, but they can give me a pledge card at the beginning of the year saying, sometime during this year, whenever I'm financially able, I pledge to give you this amount and stuff. So, I don't have it right now. Well, if you'll have it sometime this year, let's just go ahead and pledge that amount and stuff. So again, kind of, giving them, don't let them say no. Kathy.
And speaking of the pledge is a great way to go with any donors you have. If you start a Google form for a pledge and send it out, and then follow up with people who put something down, but not asking for the money up front and asking for the money in 2022 is a great way for people to think, oh, well, usually in August I have extra income. I'm going to keep that in mind. And then if somebody's in charge of putting an email out or contacting on social media or writing a letter or making a phone call, if it's something that people are prepared for versus just getting hit up for.
Yeah.
And Kathy's right in that, but my finance brain kicks in on that as well. So if you take a pledge, the Internal Revenue Service sees that as revenue, and you have to book that pledge as revenue, even though you haven't received it yet. You have to book it as revenue, and if it doesn't come through, you have to write it off. So there's a whole accounting process with pledges as well. So just make sure that you're communicating that to your finance committee.
And we'll make sure Sakina does that in nonprofit accounting.
Yeah.
Awesome. And yeah, as Jude just posted in the thing, I mean, she did a 5-year pledge for their capital campaign, and Kathy responded, new building, it does work. But I mean, a lot of people will hear me, they'll hear Intel, she used to work at Intel, and yes, my husband is still at Intel. Well, she's got money. Intel actually has periods of time during the year where their employees are getting bonuses and stuff. So being aware of that and stuff, and that, yeah, I'm an Intel, I'm a former Inteller, I'm, married to an Intel person. It doesn't necessarily mean that my cash flow, is necessarily that way. So just being in tune with that with people and being aware of it and being able to talk to it is super, super important. So.
I had this vision of Brenda standing at the doorway as her board is coming in with this collection box, saying, drop your donation in here before you sit down.
Right. Well, thank you all so much. Again, next week will be more about, again, those development streams that can be leveraged. It doesn't have to be you, but if you are someone who is eyeing that capacity grant at the end of this, you do want to make sure you have a representative here for that. It will be Kathy will be doing that as our grants coordinator, along with Lois Roberts, who is our donor services liaison. So they will be there, and then Bill and I will be here as well, pitching in the chat and assisting. So thank you all so much. You get 15 minutes back to go to the restroom or do whatever before you have to run to your next meeting. And
I'm sorry, Avis, I cut
go
you
ahead,
off. I just, on a personal note, after doing this job for now going on 16 years, I just want to acknowledge all of you and the work that you do. Communities are made up of people. And what makes our community such a wonderful place to live are people like you, people that invest in their community, just don't live there, but actually put back something into the community. So thank you for the work that you do.
All right. Everyone have a good weekend. Stay healthy, stay safe, and see some of you next week.